Hey guys, welcome into this Y'all Politics broadcast. I'm Frank Quarter with you, and joining me today is DPS Commissioner Sean Tindell. Sean, how you doing, sir?
Doing good this morning. How you doing?
Doing well. Everything going good for you, and so far in your new position?
Tell you what, it's been busy. Somebody asked me the other day what it's like. I spoke and said it's like drinking fire from a fire hydrant. I meant to say water, then I thought about it and said, fire's about right. So it's been real busy and a lot going on.
Let's jump right in to kind of respect your time today here. I know you're busy, but first of all, let's talk about the driver services. That's the most probably obvious thing to discuss here. How has the changes worked to help ease the congestion?
You know, and keeping in mind that when we came up with this plan, we knew it wasn't a permanent plan to deal with driver's license service issues. It was a temporary plan put in place mainly to deal with a backlog that we suffered after being closed for 10 weeks due to COVID. And I can tell you, although it might be inconvenient, it's just part of the reopening process. And just like restaurants having to, open at 50% capacity, they don't like that. I'm sure they want to be operating at 100% capacity. We don't necessarily
Sure.
open this way either, but we felt like it was the best way to control the crowd so that we didn't have just so many people showing up all at once. So that's why we made the decision to divide the days of the week out by the letters of the alphabet to try to control those crowds. And I think it's had the impact that we wanted to. In the morning, the lines are long. People are lining up at 6, which I highly discourage, but they're doing that, and we can't stop them. So it's taken all morning to kind of get through that 100 and 150 people that we're starting off with at 8 o'clock. But in the afternoon, at most of our driver's license stations, you can usually show up, and the lines are very minimal by the time the afternoons get there. And I can tell you that statistically, we opened the second week of June. We broke the record for the number of licenses and permits issued in June. We had more than we ever had. It was over 90,000 done, and that was only
Wow.
a week. So for July, we're going to outpace that, and we're going to break another record. So it's going to be two weeks in a row or 2 months in a row that we've exceeded output that we've ever done. And you throw in the online renewals, which are more than they've ever been, we're actually processing at a better rate than we've done before.
So one of the things that's also that deals with driver services, those bureaus, is firearm permits. And right now we've had a ton of firearm sales, and we've actually had some comments and questions from our readers and viewers as far as firearm permits. How are those being processed, and how are you dealing with the backlog of all those?
Yeah. And realizing, obviously, somebody's driver's license, and I'm not saying having a firearm permit isn't important, but having that driver's license permit allows you to go to work, allows you to earn a living, pick up your grandparents, pick up your kids, pick up your parents. And so realizing that getting that driver's license was paramount. When we first started, we didn't even have an option for firearm permits. It was just, hey, let's process driver's license to start. And then after a few weeks, we said, okay, the crowds are easing up some. Let's trying to figure out a way we can get work firearm permits back in. And the most logical thing to start with was to do it on Wednesday. And the reason we picked Wednesday, really two reasons. One, that was kind of an open day that we had as far as our alphabet system. But number two, as it currently stands, we've had since we've done fire permits, MBI agents actually do the fingerprints. And it doesn't make sense for us to have an MBI agent up at the driver's license service station 5 days a week. That there's important cases that they need to be handling. And so we said, all right, well, we'll have that MBI agent there on Wednesdays to process those fingerprints. And as I figured there would be, we've had a lot of people showing up wanting to get their firearm permits either renewed or new ones, especially with all that's going on. And it just takes a little longer because we have to do those fingerprints, and there's just no fast way to take fingerprints. It's got to be done a certain way, or the FBI will reject them. And the scanner itself will reject them. So it takes some time. And those have been our longest days. But we have some ideas in place. In fact, we're working on some new software programs that will hopefully allow for renewals to start with the firearm permits to be mailed in and we can utilize the fingerprints we already have on file, which is something we haven't been able to do in the past. Every time you renewed, you had to get new fingerprints done, and we're hoping fingerprints we have on file, and that'll save some time and allow people to mail in versus having to come to the driver's license station.
One of the things also during this pandemic is the concern for the older individuals who are trying to come in and get their renewals done. What kind of accommodations have you made for those who may be concerned about this pandemic and the social distancing aspect, as well as those older Mississippians who are concerned about being around those who may be exposed to this COVID-19?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. And again, it kind of fell on Wednesdays, and it's kind of made it. They call it Wild West Wednesdays there at headquarters because we get so many people showing up for gun permits. But it's the other thing that we've done is on Wednesday mornings between the hours of 8 and 10, seniors are first come, first serve. And so, if a senior shows up anytime between 8 and 10 on Wednesdays, they're going to go to the front of the line, and we're going to try to handle them in the morning while before it gets too hot, and take care of them first, regardless of how many other people are in line. So we're making seniors that priority on Wednesdays. I'm hoping that once we go to the mail-in renewals for firearm permits, and those folks no longer have to come to the driver's license stations, that we'll be able to expand our services for seniors, so that we get them in quickly and efficiently without them having to wait in line in the heat, particularly.
And one of the other questions we've gotten that's been very debated on social media is all these kids who didn't get their permits and get their licenses during this time, and that's a big step milestone in those young folks' lives. And so now, kind of tell people what you've done to help alleviate some of the those driver's test requirements and what's going on with the minor permits and minor driver's licenses.
Well, and I can tell you that the one of the things that we started doing during the reopening process is, instead of requiring the driver's license test, uh, um, when they go from a learner's permit to their intermediate license, we decided that we would accept an affidavit from a parent, guardian, or grandparent saying certifying, or a teacher certifying that the applicant had driven for at least 50 hours and could satisfactorily perform all their driving functions. And so this affidavit would be put in as part of their application, and therefore the driver's test would not be required. And so during this last session, the legislature went ahead and actually put that into statute that we could accept that affidavit, which is a good thing. I think when I'm thinking of you and me, when we driver's license, I don't know about you, but I went up there at 15 and
Yep.
took my test, got my driver's license. That was it. And so that driver's test was very important at that point. Now, kids have to have a learner's permit for over a year. So, presumably, during the course of that entire year, they've been driving with their parents. They've been in the car with parents. They've been in there with supervising adults, learning how to drive. And so, the actual driver's test after that year doesn't serve the same function that it did 20 or 30 years ago. And one of the things that I asked when I first got here was, well, tell me about the driver. What are they doing for their driver's test? And they said, well, we're driving around the block, and we're going to go around the block, not even around the block, around the building. Just make a circle around the building, and then that's their driver's test. I said, what? Let's just. What about an affidavit saying these, certifying these kids can drive from their parents, and
Right.
that made more sense. And importantly, it moved up the process. I mean, because one of the delays, if these people are coming in, these kids are coming in for their intermediate license, well, now we've got to wait another 5 or 10 minutes while we go out to the car, buckle our seatbelts, check everything off, ride around the building, come back and park, come back inside, and now we've wasted another 10 minutes during the day where we could have. Now we can process 2 or 3 people during that time period. Back then it was just one. So that's been a big help. I can tell you the other thing that we're looking at doing. I'm going to ask for some help from the legislatures. Right now, the way it works, again, when you and I were 15, we went and got our driver's license. Now, you come in, you get a learner's permit, you have that for a year. Then you come in, and the child can get an intermediate license. They have to have that for up to 6 months. And then after they get their intermediate license, they come back in a third time and they can get their permanent license. So we're requiring uh, people under 18 to come up here 3 times in less than 2 years to get 3 different licenses. And all the intermediate license does is it says on there that there's a curfew in effect, and that minor cannot be out past a certain time for while they're holding this license. My thought, and I've talked to several legislators about it, is instead of requiring a quote intermediate license, let's go ahead and issue their permanent license. But for the first 6 months to a year, a curfew's in effect. We don't need a special license for that. Any officer can look on the issue date and say,
Sure.
okay, that's 6 months, you're under curfew. And that way, we're removing foot traffic our license service station. And that again, hopefully is going to help and then take away the need for them to have to come up here 3 times in 2 years to get 3 different licenses.
At what age is a permit not required anymore?
17.
Okay.
So, 17 or 18. I have to check on that, but I'm pretty sure it's 17.
Gotcha.
And then after that, you don't have to have a permit anymore.
Now, going forward, there's some other things that I'm sure you're looking at to ease congestion and try to make it easier there. We've talked about offline, you and I have previously about possibly having it where the driver's ed teachers can help certify, and having those commercial drivers services can be expanded to those driving institutes. Has that been kind of looked at, and is it in process?
Absolutely. In fact, as part of the legislation that the legislators passed this past session, uh, uh, it created avenues for us to work with some of the schools that provide CDL license training to actually do some of the tests, and we can coordinate with them. And one of our plans, and I've been working with Keith Davis, who recently joined as one of my deputy commissioners, and he's over actually driver's license service and we're working on a plan for our testers to actually go to some of the schools and conduct tests there as well. So we're going to find out ways to speed that up. You think about it, there's a graduating class of individuals that have, done all their requirements for their CDL, and they got to all come in at the same time. And again, that creates a lot of foot traffic all at once when one class shows up. So it might be more beneficial for us to go to them instead of them coming to us, particularly
Sure.
we're trying to deal with everybody else's driver's license as well. As for school, I don't know about you, but again, going back, I say 20 years, I guess it's been about 30 or 40 years. Um, we we did driver's ed. I mean, I think everybody I knew did
Right.
driver's and your driver's ed teacher was very important. I mean, they really taught you the rules of the road parents. But on the coast now, I'm aware of one school that's teaching driver's ed, and that's Biloxi. I think we need to. I think we need to improve that. We need to encourage more driver's ed programs, and one of the goals that we want to do along with that, um, a lot of times, young people's first interaction with police is when they get pulled over for the first time, and there's probably a certain fear factor, a little bit of anxiety. Part of what we want to encourage in the driver's ed programs is having a portion of the class, particularly while they're operating the car. What happens when you get pulled over by police? And how do you react? Don't go reaching into the glove box because the
Right.
officer know what you're reaching for. Um, and so we,
When
we, we want to have that.
part of that is a parent's responsibility too. I mean, because I tell my kids, and one of them's about to drive and one of them's not, but we've had the conversation. Look, when you get pulled over, keep your hands visible. You don't make sudden movements. You don't reach down. You look at the officer. You be respectful. All those kind of things, just to make sure that officer feels safe, but that you are also being respectful of the law.
That's right. That's right. And that's why I think it's important for us to have an interaction, a classroom component, if you will, so that the first time somebody is interacting with a police officer isn't on the side of the road or when they think they're in trouble, but actually in a classroom setting where it's two people just talking, and hopefully
Right.
alleviate some of the problems that we've seen on the side of the road. And really it should be part of the learning process, particularly in a driver's ed program. And I do think that and maybe we need to get back to the point, whereas if you've taken that driver's ed program through the school, we shorten the time that you got to have a learner's permit. Instead of a year, probably ought to just be 6 months. And that way there's a
Right.
to go ahead and take driver's ed and get that additional training.
Now, you also deal with other things besides driver services. So, Most folks may not even know that. But what all do you do besides driver services that the people who may be listening just aren't aware of?
Well, I can tell you the Department of Public Safety is a large agency. We have over 1,100 employees. We have many divisions. Those include Highway Patrol. And Highway Patrol, within Highway Patrol, we have the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation, which is the equivalent of the FBI for the state. We
Right.
also have the Bureau of Narcotics. We have Mississippi Homeland Security. We have the Crime Stoppers. We also have the crime line, which has also been a little bit of a source of issues and some backlogs that we've had there processing evidence. We also have the medical examiner's office, which performs all the autopsies across the state. And as you know, and I think that's been well documented that there's been some backlogs there, particularly with some of the COVID issues and social that we got to deal with. So we've been developing plans to help fix that. We've also got the public safety and planning. And so there's many divisions there that really they're geared towards law enforcement, but mainly the goal is to do everything we can to make Mississippi a safe place for the residents of Mississippi.
Well, Commissioner, thank you for your time today. I know you've got a busy day ahead of you. If you ever need anything from us to get your word out, feel free to come back anytime. And we thank you for your service.
Well, look, I appreciate it, and I can tell you that I'm really excited. We've got a few things that are coming up that we're going to need to get the word out on, and we're going to start using some technology at driver's license services to our benefit. I anticipate that we'll have a reservation system online soon, and I want to come back and give you and your viewers the details on that. Folks can start taking advantage of making an online reservation instead of waiting in line. I can also tell you another thing we're done there. I'm sure you've seen traffic cams. We're in the process of putting up cameras outside driver's license stations so that people can get on and see what the lines are like before they show up. So it'll be a check the line cam before you get there.
Technology is something, isn't it?
Take advantage of it.
That's right. Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate your time.
Appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. And we thank you also for joining us today for this Y'all Politics broadcast. As always, check in for your Mississippi news and analysis right here on y'allpolitics.com. And we'll see you next time.